On October 1st, 2025, when Nigeria marked 65 years of independence, President Bola Tinubu spoke extensively about the benefits of his renewed hope agenda and appealed to Nigerians to exhibit greater commitment to patriotism. He also called for his countrymen and women to show increased faith in his ability to deliver a $1 trillion economy by the year 2030. However, the fast approaching general election in 2027 seems to have become a big distraction for those who are strategically in part to act as catalyst for the president's renewed hope agenda, his political appointees. Well, we're now being joined by Emmanuel, Ikpebe, a lawyer and human rights activist, to discuss how these appointees can help the president by focusing less on politics and more on governance. Good to have you on Newsday. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Mr. Ikpebe, I'm wondering, how the president can ensure that his appointees are committed to the renewed hope agenda and are not merely loyalists who are campaigning for 2027.
That's almost a very, very tricky question because you want to look first on the background of everybody that was appointed into the government of the president and how did they ride into those appointments. Were they picked solely on merit or was there a political undertone to it? And I think you want to lean towards the second part of my response because it had to do with a political undertone. You were loyal, you were a member of the party, you delivered in your word, and then the rest of it is history. You get the appointments and you come into office. And then when you come into office, there's a series of godfathers you have to deal with. And then that takes your eyes off the ball from trying to help the president achieve what it is he wants to achieve. So political appointees generally in Nigeria, having been bedeviled by the federal character principle as enshrined in section 14 sub 3 of the 1999 Constitution, which in my opinion has always sacrificed merit on the altar of nepotism, if you want to call it that way. Sacrificed merit completely, has made sure that all political appointees will gravitate towards who's in power and never help to achieve whatever it is that the president has wanted to do. There are a lot of examples for you to draw from if you want to look at it. So it has to go first to the mode of appointment of all these political appointees, be they ministers, SAs, and the rest of them, before we can now talk about achieving whatever it is the president has to offer.
And how clearly even are these performance metrics and accountability standards for political appointees tied to the specific targets of the renewed hope agenda? How can you prioritize a situation where governance first is put first?
Hello, I didn't get the last part of your question. Can you repeat that, please?
Yes. In order to make sure that governance first is top of the mind, what should the priorities be other than once they've already been in office, they've already been screened, and they're there now? What can be done to make sure that they are focused on governance?
The answer is nothing can be done if you bring the same set of people in whose inclination is politics and not professionalism. You are not going to get anything done. It's not there will be no metrics, there will be nothing to use in judging them, because at the end of the day, it's going to be your political allies that you are going to bring in. We've seen it happen consistently in Nigeria. So you put them in power, you put them in these offices, there's always a roadmap for them to achieve and what it is they want to achieve. But then there's always the point where they are looking at the next elections. So if I support the president or I do my job, will I get the office back? That's, or if I fall out of favor with my godfather, am I going to get the office back? We'll have a plethora of them like that. So if you bring in core professionals, I'll give you an example. In 1999, when President Olusegun Obasanjo came, take a stock list of his ministers and the people he brought to power. You will find out that he brought in core professionals, and he was, even though he followed the federal character principle because it's in the Constitution, he was in the habit of firing anybody who was not performing and still replacing him with a very competent person from that same region. And so that's somebody who was looking at the productivity and not the politics of it. So, but if you don't do that, you don't bring in people who are actually ready to push the agenda you have, and then there's no monitoring device. You actually can't monitor them actually. There's no monitoring device. They just come, tell you what they are doing, and then they are the yes man kind of people. You will never get anything done. We've seen it severally. So there's no indices to measure how they're performing, except the person actually wants to etch his name in the sands of time. We're just going to be doing a merry-go-round continuously.
So what are the implications of politicians prioritizing campaign activities over policy implementation, and how can we reverse this trend?
Well, the first implication is that the polity suffers. Now Nigerians will be suffering because nobody is thinking about what exactly they're supposed to do when they go there. Healthcare is suffering because maybe the Minister of Health is not thinking exactly of trying to go down to rural healthcare and the rest of it. You go back to education. What are the policies that have been implemented in education over time? Because you have an education minister that was there for less than 2 years, he was fired, somebody else brought in. What are the roadmaps to education? We're having the fact that you want to curb the issues of education, you have to submit your CGPA, and then all of that before you are mobilized for NYC and the rest. And I ask myself, is that the policy you are supposed to be looking at? Or the fact that education at the grassroots is suffering completely? I'm taking them step by step. Is suffering completely, that even public schools are non-existent anymore. Nobody's looking at that, but you're worried about the CGPA at the university level. I had this conversation with a friend and said, look, I'm a product of public schools, from primary school to the university. And there was no point in time where I was lacking, even when I met people who came from private schools. So all that has crashed. There's no policy to revive it. The minister is focusing on the fact that he's playing to the gallery because that's what the president is going to want to hear. And so also with every other political appointee. So once you get into that position and then you now focus on politics rather than the policies of government, the polity is going to suffer for it completely. I mean, the Emir of Kano said that the country might be on the right trajectory based on the reforms that are going on, but then the borrowing and illicit spending, unchecked spending, those were his words, is still a problem for the country. So how do we check all of that? The people who are supposed to check it are playing politics. So the polity is going to suffer continuously, except we focus on the fact that there's going to be policies, and those policies have to be implemented. That's one. Then revising the trend, as you ask, has to do with the mode of employment. How do we get the best of the crop and put them in those positions? Borrowing from an old cliche, square pegs in square holes. How do we put them in there so that they know that what they are trying to do is to perform, help the president to implement his policies, and most importantly, knowing fully well that it is Nigeria they are serving, not their own interest, and not in the interest of their political parties.
And even if this administration is able to successfully implement their renewed hope agenda targets, can it not be said that this success provides more of a powerful, sustainable, and political foundation for 2027 than any campaigning might actually do?
They say something in sales that the next best order you can get is always a referral. That's what they say in sales. And how do you get a referral? Because you have a satisfied customer. So it's not even it's a no-brainer that if you implement the policies, you give the polity what they want, Nigerians what they want, be it renewed hope agenda, be it 7-point agenda, be it whatever agenda you call it. Nigerians just want a better life. That's all of it. So if you are able to give them that based on whatever you target, you would have been done campaigning for 2027 or whatever elections you are looking for. But if you're not doing any of that, there's a rising cost of inflation, your appointees are not doing what they are supposed to do, they are leaning towards politics, and then there's food scarcity, there's no money, everything. So that means you will have to campaign vigorously for the next election. So there's no point putting it on the table. It's like 6.5 dozen. You do very well, we give you a second term. You don't do very well, you have to convince us to give you a second term. So whatever you call it, whatever moniker you give it, it doesn't change the fact that the appointees of government are failing completely in their duties, in their roles. We can list them on every finger if you want to pick them. And then they are not helping the government. And 2027 is coming, and they are taking their eyes off the ball again. And that is a big problem for the polity going forward.
But in the meantime, what role can civil society organizations play in holding politicians accountable for prioritizing the Renewed Hope agenda's objectives?
Well, civil society, from what I gather, from what I've been following through, have been doing their bit by asking the government to be accountable, but they can still do more. But should we leave everything at the doorstep of civil society organizations? I don't think we have to do that, because civil society organizations are actually set up as a watchdog. I think the main people who have the responsibility of questioning whatever it is the polity, the president, his appointees are doing is actually the press. At the fourth estate of the realm, and whatever it is guaranteed in the Constitution in Section 22. So if the press will get up and interrogate seriously whatever it is the government is doing and how they are doing it. I mean, we still have the FOI, the Freedom of Information. You can ask questions. That way, the civil society can actually key into it, because the civil society will still meet a brick wall, no matter how they try. But if the press, with the medium and the platform they have, actually go out there and interrogate, maybe, just maybe, Nigeria might be a little better than what we are seeing right now. So civil society organizations are doing well. They're trying, they're asking questions, they're interrogating government, they are coming up with policies, they are trying to push the policy directions, but I don't think everything should be left at their doorstep. The citizens and the press still have a big role to play in asking questions and making sure they get answers.
And ask the questions we do. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Emmanuel Ikpebe, lawyer and human rights activist. Thanks for joining us on Newsday.